We are facing the most serious threat to public media in history. Right now, the White House is trying to rescind already approved funding for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, money that keeps stations like ours running. Without it, essential local journalism, trusted reporting, and podcasts like this are all at risk. If you value public media, speak up now. Visit boisestatepublicradio.org/funding to learn more and take action.
We left off in Idaho with the Nez Perce tribe. Since then, our pursuit of the wolf story has taken my co-reporter Clark and I deep in Yellowstone National Park's backcountry. We're miles from any road, surrounded by rugged mountains, and so we're looking for the trail again. It's been disappearing on us at this juncture here. We're lost. What's your tips and tricks when you're looking for a trail like this? Like, are there some sort of telltale signs ahead?
Well, terrain's a big one. Where would you walk that's best? Another one is cut logs, because they're going to clear trail. So if you see a, chainsawed or cross-cut log, that's another one.
But we're with Doug Smith, the guy who put wolves back in Yellowstone. He's crisscrossed just about every corner of the park. So we're not too worried. And indeed, pretty quickly, you found it? Oh, there it is.
I don't know how we lost it. It's pretty good here.
We're back on the trail. For now. We're back on track. We are in the hinterlands of Yellowstone's Lamar Valley, near the Montana-Wyoming border. The Lamar, as locals call it, is a wide valley surrounded by forested mountains. The Lamar River flows down the middle in long, meandering ribbons. It's one of the wildest parts of the park, and we're on an overnight backpacking trip with Doug. I love that part of my job is getting lost in the wilderness. But that's not why we're here with Doug. There's a good reason we are backpacking in this part of Yellowstone. To see how wolves have changed the landscape.
I can't say holy shit on the air.
Oh, yeah.
Holy mackerel, that's a big wolf scat. No question, it's so big. It's a mixture of meat and hair. So this is wolf country, as evidenced by that gigantic scat, which is a scientific term for feces.
As you can hear, Doug knows his stuff, especially when it comes to wolves.
Well, Lamar Valley, in a lot of ways, is the center of Yellowstone for wildlife. We have 2 wolf pens that were in Lamar. Actually, one up here to my east, Soda Butte Valley more properly. And so this is just a very important area for wolf reintroduction, wolf settlement and colonization post-reintroduction.
Last episode, we were in Idaho, where the first reintroduced wolves were set free. But that was only half of the reintroduction plan. The other half took place in neighboring Montana and Wyoming, specifically the part of those states that make up Yellowstone National Park. The idea was that Idaho and Yellowstone, with their big tracts of wildland, could be a stronghold for wolves to reestablish themselves. When wolves came back to Yellowstone, this was their first stop. For 10 weeks in 1995, they stayed in 1-acre acclimation pens in the woods. The pens actually weren't all that far from the road, but far enough to be out of sight.
So we fed them twice a week, and a lot of the time it was road-killed carcasses.
Clark and I actually bushwhacked our way to the site of one of the old pens. It's grizzly bear country, so Clark made some noise to avoid surprising them. A startled grizzly could attack.
Hey, bear. Hey, bear.
The fencing is long gone, but some of those roadkill bones still litter the area. We are standing in the old wolf pen, and as advertised, there are an unusual number of bones, and it's a bit of an eerie feeling. We're out in the woods, off trail, and there's just a whole lot of bones kind of piled up in one place. This is the spot where, after several weeks, Doug and his wolf team opened the pen gates and wild wolves roamed Yellowstone for the first time in decades. And experts like Doug told us the wolves have changed the landscape dramatically.
It's a nice story, too. We ruined Yellowstone. We're fixing it by bringing back the top carnivores, most notably wolves.
The wolves, in turn, attracted a new crop of Yellowstone tourists who altered the economic landscape, too. So we decided to spend some time there to see those changes up close. I'm Heath Drusen from Boise State Public Radio and the Idaho Capital Sun. This is Howl, the story of nature's greatest comeback, what it's meant for the West, and how it could all be undone. Episode 3, Yellowstone. Christian nationalists want to turn America into a theocracy, a government under biblical rule. If they gain more power, it could mean fewer rights for you. I'm Heath Drusen, and on the new season of Extremely American, I'll take you inside the movement. Listen to Extremely American from Boise State Public Radio, part of the NPR network. Before we get back on the trail, I want to talk about a question I've been pondering throughout this project. Why are so many people so obsessed with wolves? There are a couple obvious reasons. Wolves look a lot like man's best friend. Your pup, whether Great Dane or Poodle, has wolf DNA. Wolves interacted with humans, humans domesticated wolves, and thus we have dogs. In that way, a lot of people feel a connection to wolves they don't feel for other wildlife. We ran into some people gathered around spotting scopes in Yellowstone watching wolves in the distance and got their take.
They're better than we are, and I've watched them for hours. I've stood on hills completely alone at dark watching them interact and survive.
Wolves are just super relatable. They've got families and stories, friendships and rivalries. If you watch them enough, it's hard not to get swept up in their personal dramas.
And we just happened upon a mother and her 2 pups up there, and they're playing around. They're just so human. I kind of felt for the mom who's tired, who's trying to get some sleep, and the pups keep waking her up. So it's just endearing.
Our wolf expert, Doug Smith, has been studying the animals for most of his life. From Isle Royale in Michigan to Yellowstone National Park, he's tracked, trapped, and cared for wolves. But one early experience stands out. It happened after his very first wolf job, hand-rearing captive pups in Indiana. Doug says he came back a few years later to visit the now-grown wolves. One, named Sergey, instantly seemed to remember him.
He came up and jumped on me and put both paws on my shoulders. And I'm looking face to face with a wolf standing eye to eye. And I was still young then. And I'm like, am I going to make it through this? Is he going to get aggressive? And he jumped down and walked away. So he had a deep memory of me. And it was cool.
Coming face to face with a wolf helped set Doug on a decades-long journey studying the animals. And that career is what brought us to him for our own journey into wolf country. And that started on the side of the road with packs heavy with tents, cook stoves, and freeze-dried food. All right, well, here we go. We are on the trail and officially backpacking in the Lamar. The trailhead started on a stretch of Yellowstone Road that thousands of people drive each day in summer looking for wolves. But less than a mile down the trail, we were alone. The landscape starts off open, a patchwork of light green grass and sagebrush. As we gain elevation, there's a mosaic of scrubland and pine forest. The rushing waters of Cache Creek are rarely far away.
Where we're going is a beautiful area, Cache Creek, that isn't really visited that much. And it's important to wolves. I can't tell you how many times I've flown over it in a small airplane. and found wolves there, witnessed interesting wolf behavior. There's an old den right by where we're going to walk. So, we're going to just head in there and kind of immerse ourselves in wolf world.
We would love to see a wolf, of course. Weirdly enough, though, a big part of why we're out here with Doug is actually trees.
This young aspen forest here is all really recent, and I think, really cool. And, I just did the thing you're not supposed to, put a value judgment on nature. Nature just is. But with the return of carnivores to this ecosystem, wolves, cougars, increase in bears, they've all kind of come back. You got this, which you didn't have before, and this means life to other things.
So you might wonder, what do wolves have to do with trees? As an apex predator, wolves almost exclusively eat meat. They hunt elk, deer, moose, bison, and plenty of smaller game too. There's not an obvious connection to woody, leafy things. It all has to do with a concept called the trophic cascade.
So a trophic cascade is kind of deals with how ecosystems are structured. There's top-down control. That's predators eat prey and prey eats vegetation. So predators are indirectly impacting vegetation through the impact they have on prey, which are things like elk and deer, which eat the vegetation. That's a major structuring force in most worldwide ecosystems. Maybe I should just say temperate zone ecosystems.
Basically, top predators cause a cascading series of changes down the food chain.
And why it's interesting is when European settlers moved across North America, they killed all the predators. So you really disrupted this process of a trophic cascade. So in more generalized terms, you impacted the ecosystem and how it was structured. And that has all kinds of knockoff effects or ripple out effects.
According to Doug, before reintroduction, we hadn't had a functioning trophic cascade in these parts for a long time. To illustrate how this works, Doug stops us a lot, every time we see a small stand of aspens. They're the trees with white bark and leaves that turn golden in autumn, kind of a classic Rocky Mountain fall foliage tree. Doug is pumped when he sees these trees because it signals that the ecosystem is healing.
I don't mean to keep stopping every time I see aspen, but it's been a few years since I've been up Cache Creek. So I'm still kind of marveling at this. But you guys don't have to be ecologists to see all these aspen are young within a few years. And man, give them 20 or 30. You're going to have a forest here. We're going to be standing in the shade. Totally different ball game. I think that's restoring balance to the ecosystem.
You see, according to the trophic cascade theory, aspens had a problem before wolves came back. Elk browse these trees. If they're not too worried about predators, then they won't be in a hurry to move on. That means they can sit and munch a young aspen until it's chewed to the nub. The recovery is a slow, uneven process. To be sure, there are still plenty of aspen stands that haven't recovered, even 30 years after wolf reintroduction. And Doug shows us an example of that further down the trail.
So what we're looking at here is pretty much a dead aspen stand. There's old trees that are gone, and there's some new trees trying to come up. But what happened here is with the loss of predators, wolves, cougars, and bears declined but weren't gone. The elk population surged and was pretty much on their own for most of the 20th century, and what they really did is they did a number on the woody vegetation.
Basically, aspens get chewed up before they have a chance to grow tall. But if an elk is on alert for wolves, it's a different story. An elk that's worried about being eaten is one that won't hang out as long in one place. A nibble here, a nibble there. In that scenario, young aspen trees are more likely to get trimmed rather than decimated. What's mind-blowing about this theory is how far the effects rippled past trees once aspens and willows started coming back.
A lot more of it's growing, and that impacts things like beavers. I've documented that. That includes things like songbirds, willow flycatchers, Wilson's warblers, fox sparrows. I've documented that too. And that's because there's taller willow and aspen.
Doug and other scientists contend that the return of wolves, paired with an increase in grizzlies and cougars, has even restored river ecosystems. Here's how it works. The elk go easier on aspens and other deciduous trees, like willows. These are thirsty trees that like being near rivers. More trees near the river, in turn, means beavers coming back. Beavers need trees for their dams. And when beavers build dams and trees provide shade, that's the kind of natural infrastructure that helps a lot of other river species. A big one is trout. And of course, trout and other fish feed plenty of animals below and above the water.
Yellowstone's a very different place with and without wolves.
Some scientists don't totally agree with Doug, though they don't dispute the existence of a trophic cascade effect. They just think it's less pronounced.
I think what the scientists are arguing about are matters of degree and levels of impact. It doesn't throw out this idea that trophic cascades are real.
Dueling research over the years has gone back and forth on the topic. Why do you think it's become so controversial?
Scientists get play in publications, and they love to disagree. You don't get famous by agreeing with each other.
We could spend a whole episode on the nuances of trophic cascade theory. We won't, though. It's not that the details aren't important. It's just that most scientists agree that wolves had a major positive impact on the ecosystem in the western U.S., and that they are a key species in keeping nature in balance in the Rocky Mountains. Talking about Yellowstone before the return of wolves, Doug says,
to me, it was just pretty scenery, because it wasn't ecologically vibrant.
30 years later, he says it feels completely different.
We're, whatever it is, 4 or 5 miles from the road. This, to me, is a second home, so to speak, and it's an intact ecosystem now. I think it's better for that reason.
We weren't lucky enough to see a wolf on our hike. And sure, it was a little disappointing. But sitting around a campfire miles from any other human, knowing wolves and other top predators were out there, I got what he was saying. There's a comfort in knowing there are places that are still wild. And spending time backpacking in the Lamar Valley almost felt like time travel. Like getting a peek at an era before we paved over and plowed so much of the natural world. So, wolves have changed the landscape. They've brought back balance to nature, even helped rivers and fish. But they've had an impact on us, too. They've attracted hordes of new visitors to Yellowstone whose number one goal is to see a wolf in the wild. 30 years after reintroduction, the once quiet northern part of the park is humming. Every day in summer, hundreds or thousands of tourists head into the park on wolf watching tours. Many more come on their own, hoping to see one or a whole pack up close. And quite a few of those tourists end up finding their way to Rick McIntyre.
So I'm concentrating on looking. This is would be the Slough Creek pack. And we've been seeing them every day for several months here. They have 2 surviving pups.
On a chilly summer morning, Clark and I find him hunched over a spotting scope, pointed at a line of trees on a mountain. Rick has been coming to the park nearly every day since the beginning of reintroduction.
Either the end of this year or early next year, I'll have my 10,000th day in the field. And luckily, right from the beginning, I took detailed notes on what the wolves were doing, and I now have more than 14,000 pages of field notes of wolf behavior here in Yellowstone. We see them generation after generation and see patterns of behavior. How, just like humans, wolves have not only their own personalities, but also their own character.
Rick worked for the National Park Service for more than 20 years as a wolf researcher.
I started in Yellowstone in 1994, which was the year before the reintroduction. And then I've been here for almost all of the time that the wolves have been back, going back to 95.
In addition to researching wolves, Rick acted as a kind of wolf interpreter for tourists. He's probably talked to and shared a spotting scope with tens of thousands of visitors. He knows the story of just about every wolf in the park. The alpha males and females who lead the packs, who is up and down in the complex hierarchies that make up packs.
Their alpha female 907 is the oldest known wolf in the park. She's 11 years old. And this is her 4th term as alpha female, meaning that she lost it 3 times. And in those cases, it was either to a sister or a niece. So she's had a lot of hard times in her life, and she's always been able to fight back and prevail.
Rick still gets up before sunrise, packs his gear, and heads into Yellowstone each morning, even though he retired in 2018. Now, he's kind of the unofficial head wolf watcher in the park, the leader of a growing community. The Wolf Watchers of Yellowstone are a loose-knit group that has kept growing over the past 30 years. These are people who visited Yellowstone, got captivated by wolves, and keep coming back year after year. If you drive through the Lamar Valley, you'll see them dotting hillsides and bluffs with impressive-looking spotting scopes. My co-reporter Clark talked to some of them in the park.
Kevin, you come from Kansas for 21 years, you said?
21 years, since 2006.
And there's one thing particularly bringing you out here, and what is it, and how did you get started?
Wolves, and we met Rick, and he introduced us to him, showed us, and we've just been hooked ever since.
Marissa De La Fuente said she drove out to Yellowstone 12 years ago on a whim and had a life-changing run-in with a wolf.
The old alpha female was standing in the middle of the road with a duck in her mouth, a loon, and she stopped and hooked eyes with me. And you could hear the people behind me going, "Oh my, she must be really hungry." But in that moment, she met my soul inside those eyes.
Now, she spends several weeks a year in Yellowstone. Lori Lyman relocated her life to wolf country, to a hamlet right outside the park boundary. She now runs the website Yellowstone Reports, a daily log of wolf and other wildlife sightings.
I came here in 97, the first time, and I taught school, and in 2005 I retired and moved to Silvergate.
What was it, Lori, originally for you about wolves that got you hooked, that captured your imagination?
You know, it's very similar to teaching, because watching wolves is like watching a playground. You know, you have ones that are still in the sandbox. Then you have, the yearlings that are playing soccer. And then you have the junior high kids that are sitting at the lunch tables talking. And so I first noted that. And then it's their society. So by watching them all the time, you could see these traits, not only physical traits, but character traits that are passed, from one generation to the other. And that, it just fascinated me.
Wolf watchers tend to be generous with their time. And, more importantly, their scopes. If you see one hunched over a scope and want to see what they see, they're likely to happily give you a look. All of this watching represents much more than good feelings and love of nature. Wolf tourism brings an estimated $80 million to the Yellowstone area each year. On a typical summer day in the park, you'll see numerous tour vans zipping up and down the Lamar Valley and beyond. Hotels and restaurants are packed, and lots of the people there have been lured by the rare chance to see Canis lupus in the wild. Keep in mind, the towns on the edge of the park are small and rely largely on tourism. For example, West Yellowstone, Montana has about 1,200 people. Gardner, Montana, less than 750. Farther from the park, Cody and Jackson, Wyoming have about 10,000 people apiece. So $80 million is significant. But there is a cost to wolves, too. They've done more good for the ecosystem than expected. But they've also grown more numerous and roamed farther than many thought. And wolves quite literally take a bite out of some people's businesses from time to time. Ranchers, farmers, and hunters often have a very different experience with the animals than tourists in Yellowstone.
They are a large apex predator, and they need a lot of room and a lot of ungulates, a lot of food to eat. And in my opinion, you just don't have that in Idaho anymore. The people that think that they can coexist are just in la-la land.
Conflicts between wolves and domestic animals can often be costly.
We have lost over 200 head of livestock in that 20 plus years to wolves. We have been paid for 0 head ever because the compensation program is based on confirmed losses.
And dead cows often lead to dead wolves. That's next time on Howl. Howl was created by me, Heath Drusen. It was written and reported by me and Clark Corbin. Johanna Zorn edited Howl. Mixing and sound engineering by James Dawson. Make sure to check out the companion written series at idahocapitalsun.com. That's capital with an A. It's different than the podcast and well worth checking out. Music from Artlist. Additional reporting from Mary Ellen Pitney. Thanks to Sasha Woodruff, Christina Lords, Tom Michael, Julie Lucchetta, Kyle Faunensteel, Katie Kloppenberg, and Lacey Daly. Special thanks to Morgan Springer. Howl is part of the Boise State Public Radio podcast family. It's hosted in partnership with the Idaho Capital Sun, part of the state's newsroom network. Howl was edited with assistance from the editor corps of the Public Media Journalists Association, with support from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people. It was also supported by a grant from the Fund for Investigative Journalism.
Planet Money helps you understand the economy. We find the people at the center of the story.
Garbage in New York, that was like a controlled substance.
We show you how money influences everything.
Tell me what you like by telling me how you spend your money.
And we dig until we get answers.
I had a bad feeling you were going to bring that up.
Planet Money finds out. All you have to do is listen. The Planet Money Podcast from NPR.